Hey, everybody, this is Tim Sutton, back for episode 22 for season one of a new perspective, trying to bring you a new perspective of differabilities, disabilities. I do prefer to call them differabilities because everybody has abilities. They just may do things a little differently. And if this is the first time being on the show or viewing the show, I'm a law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia. I've worked with people with disabilities for about 20 years. Primarily autism, intellectual disabilities, Alzheimer's, and other forms of dementia. And through that, I've been able to develop a way to get out and train public safety to understand disabilities and teach them the better ways to interact and help care partners, caregivers, if you want to call. But we're going to learn about the care partner tonight. But to go out there when they're responding to calls for service, to be able to understand what's going on in those individuals' lives and what they're dealing with when they're living the journey of Alzheimer's or any other dementia. So tonight I've got a guest, local guest here to the Richmond, Virginia area, who's making an impact in a lot of people's lives that are taking that journey of dementia, trying to ease some of the pressure and the stress and the uncertainty of the dementia. And she's actually a very good educator. I've heard her name all over the place. And we teach a lot of the same things, but she's more in depth than I am. I teach a lot of the behaviors related to Alzheimer's and dementia. She has a business called No I Care LLC, and also she's a dementia care consultant and an educator. So what we're going to do tonight is just have a conversation with her. She's going to educate you some and help you learn what's going on in the mind and the brain of somebody dealing with dementia. So Missy Harden, we've got her here tonight to share some information and her knowledge, and I would just like to bring her on now. Hey, Missy,
Tim.
how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Last week we had Jay Allen, who's one of the contestants on The Voice, told us about his journey with Alzheimer's, with his mother being diagnosed at 51 and ended up dying at 54. And he shared his story and the impact he's making. You know, he's got a platform to make his voice heard, no pun intended. But we had a conversation, and all of us have a different platform to use. And my goal is to bring people on like you and like him and other people use my platform, not just for me, but to get you out there so people can learn about you and what you're doing. So I know you're very active in helping care partners, and that's one thing I want to bring up first. You hear the word a lot of time, caregiver, and things like that. I have talked to many people. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Schaefer, but he's a very good friend of mine, and that's the first time I heard care partner. Can you define what a care partner is for the audience?
It would be my pleasure, because it's essential on the dementia care journey to think about partnering, not doing to or for someone, but partnering so that you recognize that person's remaining abilities.
Right.
Just because you have brain change doesn't mean you can't still do things. You may do it differently. You might need more time.
Right.
You might need more support, like visual supports, because words don't make sense anymore.
Right.
But if you are just doing to me, then I'm going to stop doing.
Right.
And I'm going to lose my abilities. I love that you use that expression, differabilities, because
Right.
people living with dementia still have abilities all the way through. It's our job as partners to recognize that.
And work with them. And I'd heard before, caregiver, you're not giving anything to the relationship. Caretaker, you're not taking anything. You're partnering,
Right.
to deal with it. Yeah. So it's, and I think more people need to understand that. And, everybody wants to be politically correct, but I think that correctly defines the relationship that needs to be there so that both individuals can have the best quality of life and not drain each other. And that's where you come in to help deal with a lot of that stress and things like that. But you talk about different abilities, and it just popped in my head. One thing I always throw at a class when I'm teaching. I say, how many steps are there? And you may have heard this, to brushing your teeth.
Hundreds.
And, you think Dad used to go into the bathroom, brush his teeth, 2 minutes later, he was done. I said, but when the person's lost that memory and they're not familiar with their surroundings, number one question is, where's the bathroom? And when they find the bathroom, if it's dark in there, how do I turn the light on? They don't remember that. Me being a law enforcement, I know usually on the knob side, 4 feet on the inside, there's a switch. But
Well, that's news to me.
yeah, yeah, it's usually on the knob side, typically 4 feet on the inside. And but once they get in the bathroom and they're looking down at the sink and there's a glass there with 3 toothbrushes. Okay, which one's mine? How am I supposed to know? And then when they pick one, okay, does the toothpaste, is it a flip top? Is it a screw off top? How do I get the top
Or
off?
is
And
it the
then,
toothpaste or the hemorrhoid
or
cream?
the
Because
hemorrhoid
they both come
cream.
in a tube.
Correct. They look very
You.
similar. And unfortunately, as terrible as it sounds, I've heard of EMS having to respond where somebody has taken Drano, which may look like Crystal Light, put it in the water, mix it up, thinking they're drinking Crystal Light lemonade and they're drinking Ajax
Right.
or something like that. So, but yeah, it's figuring out every little process to get the job done. And it takes Dad 20 minutes to brush his teeth. And for a care partner, waiting and waiting and waiting, wondering what's going on, what are they doing? We got to leave. We got to leave. I know it gets frustrating. How how do you? I tell you, give us an idea. I know you've got some slides.
Yeah,
What
let's
goes
do
on
a
in the
little
brain?
brain let's do a little brain tour, Tim.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens to what the functions of the brain are and what happens for a person living with dementia. So if we could bring up those slides, here we go. All right, on the top right, you see Executive Control Center. That is right here. So if you are watching, or Tim, if you are watching, go ahead and put your hand right on the front of your brain. This is your Executive Control Center. This is your thinking brain. Guess what? It never interacts with the outside world, but it is our control center because it helps us with impulse control. It helps us analyze the data that's coming in, all the sensory data that's coming in.
Right.
It helps us make choices. Is it this or that? It helps us initiate. A lot of times with dementia, that's where the breakdown is. We don't know how to get started. So we can't get started. But if you get me started, I might be able to sequence through, but then I might not be able to stop. And so I might perseverate over and do the same thing over and over and over again because that stop switch isn't gone. And then when I'm finished, I don't know how to move on and what to do next.
Right.
The other thing this part of our brain does, it gives me awareness of my abilities. It gives me awareness of myself, and it gives me awareness of others. And when this part of your brain is broken, you can't control your impulses. You can't necessarily initiate a task. You get stuck. And oftentimes that's where the frustration comes in is like, well, all I asked you to do is brush your teeth. Okay, go brush your teeth. And I'm nodding my head and you're nodding your head. So I think you're in agreement. And then we come down to the hearing and language control center. So it's not that hearing changes, although there can be hearing loss, but that's not dementia. It's what the brain does with what it hears.
Right.
So it's what it comprehends, it's vocabulary, and typically the left side of our brain is attacked more than the right side of our brain. So on the left side of our brain, I guess we could bring that slide up too, real quick. That's the next slide.
The left side.
Anyway, one more. There we go. So the left side of our brain is where we have vocabulary, where we have comprehension, understanding the words, and where we have speech production. So getting those words out. The right side of our brain, for whatever reason, typically remains. That's where those forbidden words are. My mother-in-law would never have sworn, but towards the end of her journey, she got distressed, those were the words that were available to her and they would come out. Social chit chat. You might talk with someone living with advanced dementia and you can have a lovely surface conversation. How are you? How are the kids? Nice to see you. But that might recycle. That social chit chat remains because it has rhythm. So those are the things that remain that are really powerful music, poetry, prayer, counting. Those things remain intact, and we can use those as strength. But we have to understand that the understanding, the comprehension part, and the expression part typically is damaged and is lost. The other thing is what I'm doing a lot of now is gestures, head shakes. I put my hand out to shake your hand, you'd probably reach out. Those automatic movements, those also remain.
Okay.
So that's sort of what happens in the changes of language.
Okay.
And not to get too much more into it, but the Vision Center is our primary source of taking in data. But what happens with vision, Tim, and those listening, it's not that we get blindness, it's that our brain says, I'm not working so well, so I'm not going to take in as much information.
Right.
And we lose that peripheral awareness. And so we become very central focused. So where you right now can see the whole room, somebody living with dementia might be only seeing a view like through binoculars.
Right. And I tell officers, if you know the person has dementia, don't walk up from behind them. Don't walk up from the side. Make sure you come around and approach them
Right.
straight on, because they're so focused in that direction, and you don't want to startle.
Right. But when you approach from straight on, Tim, this is critically important. You want to do it from 6 feet away so that they can see you and not feel like they're being confronted.
Right.
So far enough away that they can give you permission to get closer.
Right. And if you're going to touch them, ask them, can I touch your hand? Can I put my hand on my shoulder, on your shoulder, or whatever?
And do
But
it
is
to
that
yourself first. I'm going to touch you. Okay. I'm going to touch you right here.
Is that part of the depth perception aspect of it? Because I've heard a lot that sometimes depth perception is jeopardized.
So yes. So
Yeah.
as dementia progresses, you go from binocular vision to monocular vision. And when you have monocular vision, you've lost your depth perception.
Right.
Your brain, it's not that you've got blindness, it's that your brain can only process this much information. And that's where you start seeing lots of falls. Or you see somebody reach across the table or just grab things out of the air, because if you are just looking with with monocular vision, you don't have that sense of depth. So
And
people
have you seen, I've noticed with some people, and with that depth perception, it's even if the floor is still level, however, there's a transition there. A lot of times they have a hard time going over that threshold, because just the change of the texture, and there's an obvious change, even though the floor is completely flat. Are you aware of that, or
Yes.
have
Yeah.
experience?
And so that's where lighting is really critical, really super important. And just that ability to navigate space is also diminished as the brain changes. So with dementia, the brain is dying. A lot of people aren't aware of that. It's a disease, and the brain is dying. So the parts of the brain that are affected start causing those changes globally in
Right.
someone's ability to navigate through their environment.
Right. As far as the depth perception, I know it's recommended, and I tell people, if wandering is an issue where they're going to go out of the door, the care partner has got to live their life. They've got to take baths. They've got to go to the bathroom. So there are those intermittent times when they may not be right there, right over their shoulder, where the individual suffering from dementia walks over, grabs the doorknob, and walks out. And I've heard about putting black rugs or mats in front of doors
Because it
because of
appears
that
as a
depth
hole.
perception. Yeah, it
Yeah,
appears to be a hole.
Mhm.
And they don't want to go through over the hole, so they turn and change their direction. So I know that's a big, and that's how I got into teaching what I teach, was originally from the whole wandering and elopement issue with autism, but
Right.
and meeting these families and understanding what they're going through. So the changes in the brain. What I know, there's no time as Alzheimer's specifically, but it can be, you get the diagnosis and somebody may live 3 years. You may have somebody else lives 21 years, and you think about the drain on the family and that care partner. So what do you do, or what resources have you got available to help those care partners and the individual suffering to just make it an easier ride for them?
Well, what got me into this this field was one, I'm an occupational therapist, so I knew all the things. But as a daughter-in-law caring for both my in-laws living with dementia,
Right.
it became
Personal.
real. It
Yeah.
became personal. It became real. And there are tremendous resources in the community, but they tend to be splintered. And there's a lot of information, but there's not a lot of skill building. So
Right.
my goal is to help people better understand the manifestations, why the person is doing the things they're doing,
Right.
what their remaining abilities are, and develop some strategies and skills so that as a care partner, you can best support this person living with
Right.
brain change. And it's not hard.
Right.
Some of the times I'm like, well, this is common sense, but there are simple things that you can do, like, hey, Tim, it's Missy, and wait for you to acknowledge me.
Right.
Even if you knew my name, I'm not going to assume that you know who I am. I'm just going to
Right.
always introduce myself and not question you. Like, you know who I am.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
unfair, and that causes distress.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to cause nervousness because in their mind, oh, apparently I'm supposed to know this person and have no idea. Because yeah, that's going to heighten the stress as well.
The other really hugely important thing that I drill in home is you can't be a lone ranger on this journey. I tripped on my cape, right? You can't,
Right.
you need to build your team. And people tend to not recognize that that needs to start from the initial diagnosis. You need to start building people who are going to support you as the care partner and your loved one, so that as the dementia gets bigger and the person's needs get greater, you have other help along the way. Because if the primary
Yeah.
care partner gets spent, then who's going to provide care or advocate for best care?
Right. And that's when, unfortunately, a lot of times people get the diagnosis and that friend network vanishes. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not contagious. This is when they need you the most. Whether it's just to go over there and say, hey, why don't you go run errands? I'll sit with them for a little while. We'll spend some time with them. They need that opportunity to get away and just relax.
So one of the biggest things, though, is the ask. So one of the tasks that I ask care partners to do is make a list of all the things. Put it in 15-minute to 2-hour to longer periods of time frame. So when somebody asks you, you can give them actionable items
Right.
to act on to support you.
Right.
And recognize that people have different gifts. You don't want everyone bringing the same gift to a party. So if
Right.
somebody can do direct care, let them support you in that way. If
Yeah,
someone
if
else,
everybody brings you a green bean casserole, you're going to be tired of green bean casserole.
yeah, right. And if someone's like, hey, I can talk all day and I can have the same conversation all day, when you're like, oh, I can't take this anymore.
Right.
Let that person come and have that conversation all day while you go and restore, get some respite.
Well, I'm curious. Tell me your experience dealing with music, because I know music has brought about the ability to people that almost just can't talk, can't move. Next thing you know, they're standing up and they're dancing or talking or whatever, singing. What have
So
you experienced with it?
music is magic, because music is a whole brain sensory experience, and it's right brain. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the right brain remains, right? So you bring up the part of the brain that works. It's rhythmic. You tend to sway with music, so you get
Right.
movement going. The language is rhythmic, so you get words going, and it can activate other parts of the brain, and you start seeing increased ability. Plus, mood penetrates our soul, right?
Right.
So it has emotional power, it has spiritual power, it has cognitive power, it has rhythmic and movement power. So highly recommend finding the music preference of the person. And if you don't know, we usually say go to the music that they would have listened to when they were in their late teens, early 20s. That's usually the music that
Right.
is
Take them,
remembered.
takes them back to another
Right.
time.
It does. And now with music, you don't say, what are the words? You just sing
Right.
Remember, we still have vision, and the ability to read often remains. The ability to comprehend what you're reading may be lost, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that the person can't follow a song sheet and use that autonomic skill that still remains. So yes, music is highly effective and powerful. Can change arousal alertness states. If
Right.
somebody is wound up, you start playing music that has a deeper bass and a slower tempo um, at a nice rate, and just see how
Right.
they respond to that. If they're sleepy and they won't wake up,
Mhm.
you gradually increase the tempo and the volume
Okay.
of the music to help them wake up. But you have to watch them. You don't just crank the music.
Right. Right. Right.
You have to, that's where the partnering comes in. You have to respond to what the person is showing you.
Right. Well,
So
that's
you have to
a
be a detective.
yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I tell officers, I actually taught a class earlier today down at state police headquarters, but this was a different topic. But I said, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
If you haven't heard you or heard somebody explaining these things, then you do the best you can with what you got. But if you can get some education to understand what's going on in the brain, and then you can be a more effective care partner, and give that person and give yourself what you need to, I don't know if you want to call it a successful journey with Alzheimer's, because the end result, but just make the ride smoother and a little bit easier. Any little thing helps, and you see how people are struggling. But I know there are a lot of care partners out there that just don't reach out, and a lot of people think that, oh well, this is our generation, we handle our own problems. But if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what would they need? What information?
So there's several ways to do that. I offer a 5-week care partner support series where it's on Zoom. So, we help them get on Zoom, where they learn about the brain changes and how to better understand what those changes are, and how to try some strategies and see how that
Right.
changes approach. Get in touch with me via email is probably the best way. In the community, if anyone's associated with Douda Senior Consultants, I'm a referral source to them.
Yeah, we had Jen on here a few weeks ago.
Okay. The Alzheimer's Association, I'm a community educator for them. And so I often, you can find me in the community, or reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, and they'll connect you with me. And Senior Connections is the area on
Okay.
area agency on aging.
Right.
And I'm coordinated with them too, as a
Oh, okay.
resource.
So tell me the definition or what it all entails, a positive approach to dementia care. What is that?
So a positive approach to care was founded by Teepa Snow. She has an unusual name,
Yeah.
but she is a world-renowned educator on dementia.
Okay.
And the positive approach focuses on connecting first before you offer any kind of care. So basically, you need to get the person's attention,
Okay.
connect with them relationally, relationship first, and you can do that in 15 seconds, Tim.
Right.
15 seconds of connecting and helping gain that trust of that person
Right.
before you try to offer any assistance and care can make all the difference. So
Okay.
positive approach is about connecting first, then offering care focused on the person's remaining abilities. So what can the
Okay.
person still do, and how can you support them to do that?
And I think a lot of that comes down to just respect.
It's dignity, but it's also,
Yeah.
if people are efficient and they want to get things done, and we need to recognize if somebody has diminishing brain,
Right.
with what they have left, they need more time. We need to
Right.
slow down.
And let them
We need
process
to
it.
show more. Would you like, instead of saying, "Hey, Tim, you want something to drink? I'm going in the kitchen and I'm going to
Right.
get a drink. Would you like a drink?"
Right.
Well,
Letting them
with
see it.
changes that happen, we hear one in every 4 words.
Right.
So, and what's the person's response typically going to be? No.
No.
But if I said, "Hey, Tim, you want some?"
Right.
And I wait for you to say, to say yes and not
And
just shake your head.
it may take 10 to 15 seconds just to get them to respond to that. And it's being patient and waiting for that response and not trying to rush things.
Right. So, and that's where the partnering comes in. What is the person that I'm supporting
Right.
showing me, and how can I give them value? What can they do for me? Don't make it one way. That's where the giver and the taker, I don't
Yeah.
like those words, because
Right.
what can this person living with brain change have to have a sense of value, to have a sense of agency, to have a sense of, do you want to spend time with me, or you just put out because you're having to
Right.
take care of me, right? So
Right.
that's where the relationship and positive approach is different than some other approaches. So if people want to learn about positive approach to care, they can go to teepasnow.com, and I guess we can
Okay.
put that in the comments. That's TEEPASNOW.com.
And
Great resources there. Great resources with Alzheimer's Association and Senior Connections too.
I get a lot of people asking about the paranoia part that comes in, and a lot of times I see people get paranoid when they're dealing with dementia. And my only explanation is, look, when you know everything, the person with Alzheimer's, they have all the facts, everything. They know this is true, this is true, this is true. And you're telling them stuff that's completely conflicts with it all the time. I'm like, it seems like, yeah, they would start getting paranoid, because why is everything I think is correct, I'm being told it's wrong? And I
That
tell people,
causes a lot of distress.
yeah.
And there's a part of our brain deep inside. It's called the amygdala. That's your word for the day.
Oh,
It's
I
super
just talked about it
small,
earlier.
mighty part of our brain.
Yeah.
And it is purpose is to protect us and to get our needs met. When
Right.
that part of our brain is triggered and it remains intact all the way through the journey, it takes over the thinking part of our brain and it puts you on guard. So that's
It's
where you get
fight,
fight.
flight, or freeze.
Yep,
It controls
absolutely.
that fight or flight. And I know
And
it's effective.
unless you can calm that part of the brain down and recognize that that's what's being triggered, not just in the person living with dementia,
Right.
but in you as a care partner, when you're getting fired up and things aren't going well, your thinking brain has been hijacked, and you need to take some deep breaths and calm down and
Right.
recognize it. And that's the great thing about dementia. You can take a time out, you can pause, regroup, and reapproach, because you've got the opportunity to do that.
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome. You get so much information there that I would encourage people to reach out to you. Yeah, we do a 30-minute show, but I feel like this affords the opportunity to come back and talk about it some more and other kind of topics and stuff. So I would definitely love to have you back at some point to go over more, because
I love that.
obviously we just scratched the surface.
So you have to take care of yourself to provide good care for someone else. That's my takeaway to the care partners out there. Build your team.
And realize most of your care partners feel like they are the best one. Nobody can do it like them. They are the best ones. But if they wear themselves out, I shared it last week, they're going to get worn out. Next thing you know, they're going to be in a hospital looking up, wondering, okay, who's taking care of them now?
Yeah.
So you need to take care of yourself to take care of them.
Absolutely. And you can be an advocate for your person as you help other people learn who they are and what's important to them as a person.
Well, you're obviously blessing a lot of people, and I would encourage people to reach out to you, and that they're dealing with that journey. Just know that they're over 6 million people in this country dealing with it, according to Alzheimer's Association.
And
So
celebrate your person.
Yeah, and there are people out there like you who are doing the same thing, just trying to educate and help and be a support for them. So we'll do this again. I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us and sharing this information with us.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
I already call you Teepa, but I mean Missy. Take care now. Thank you so much. Everybody, I hope I hope everybody got something out of this and understands a little bit more what's going on in the brain with Alzheimer's and dementias. And, there's some great people out there, great resources, and I hope you'll take advantage of contacting them, just getting the assistance you need, or if you know somebody dealing with it, going out there and being there to help them. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and I appreciate your dad watching. I love you very much.